For 50 years, Marion Wilhoite has been the sports editor of the Daily Herald newspaper in Columbia, Tennessee. This video is a conversation with Marion about his family, his profession, and the people that have touched his life. The foundation of all he has been and done is his family. You started your life out in what's now still a beautiful campus in the middle of the city, Columbia Military Academy it was then. Talk about living there and your family and what it was like in the early days, your earliest memories.
Well, my earliest memories is just being on where military life was demanding, but my father just wanted me to always behave. My older brother Courtney wanted us just to be good guys and let us kind of go on in life. And of course, they didn't have school there. You went to public school until the 7th grade. But on that campus, all kind of athletics were there. Even boxing, swimming, wrestling, track, cross country, besides the major sports. And then my first 6 years of my life, I was in what was called the main building, and I came to realize later on that the great college football coach Red Sanders, who went on to great things at UCLA, was actually lit in the department before we did when he was the head football coach at Columbia Military Academy. So I just say it was so blessed to be like that. And then at the age of 7, the new dormitory was built, and we moved into it. And my dad was always good at academics and tutoring kids and recruiting students. And
that's what he did for CMA.
CMA, and we had the 3 head coaches were also lived in the dormitory, and all the students, of course, that were athletes were in there. So I actually lived like an athletic dormitory. And so let's say the 3 head football coach, John Bass, basketball coach Bill Lawson, and baseball coach Bill Gunn were all there, and all 3 worked football, and so it was just sports. So I was just born into a sports atmosphere around. My older brother liked sports, but he kind of grabbed the military part of it and went on to school there and stayed in military court and stayed in military life. So but I was just blessed to be able to have the opportunities I had to be around people to learn more sports than I did academics and military.
Courtney, your older brother went on to follow in the footsteps of the colonel.
Well, that's what he did. He stayed in service. Well, my father had a degree from Vanderbilt. He went on to Vanderbilt to school for a couple of years before going into the Air Force, and stayed there for 8 years. And then he came back and finished his education and ended up in Jonesboro, Arkansas, St. Bernard's Hospital, and worked in administration there, and retired a few years ago. And he's so close to athletics there. He was the commissioner of umpires in the state of Arkansas for Babe Ruth baseball, American Legion baseball, and he's kept his ties with Vanderbilt. He came back every year and worked the inter-squad games for Coach Smitow and then Coach Mewburn. And then whenever I've been able to go to Jonesboro, I've met all the coaches at Arkansas State, the universities there, and both of Courtney's children graduated from Arkansas State, and his boy Van has never married except in the Arkansas State sports. He goes to every game they play, home or away. And
your mom supportive of everything you were doing?
Supported all we did. She worked some on campus and in the offices there, and also worked some at Montana Chemical Company in their offices.
So you had brother Andy, and still in Columbia, had Susan, a sister who's also still in Columbia.
Right. Now, Andy's lived most of his life in Columbia. Now, he and Susan both, because of my mother died, in fact, on my 21st birthday, and they were much younger than I were, and my father was in bad health, so they spent their school years in Nashville, and actually my brother Andy graduated Hillsborough High School, played baseball there, and it was almost some really good athletes that went on and played SEC football, basketball, like Barry Burton, Larry Fitzgerald, and Ricky Moss. All three played SEC sports, and he played with Tommy Prinsley, a real good coach in Hillsborough. And then
Punt, Barry, punt.
right,
Yeah.
you got that right. And so then Andy moved back here, lived all his life here, and Susan came back here and went to Columbia Military Academy when they started accepting female students.
Mm-hmm. So she got to.
And she's lived quite a few places in her adult life, but the last several years she's been back in Columbia, and of course there our son Glenn, who's in Hendersonville now working for Teva Software in Nashville for several years, and granddaughter Brandy, who graduated McGavitt this year. And
Now, even though you were on the private academy, what was a military academy then, you attended the public schools, starting out in elementary school with McDowell. And your favorite classes at McDowell Elementary were?
I guess you could say arithmetic.
And lunch.
And lunch, with lunch and recess.
Mr. Black, you were a frequent visitor at Mr. Black's office, or saw some visits to Mr. Black's office?
Yeah, he was the principal, and I didn't stay quiet sometime, and I didn't write very clear or very large or anything like that. Still don't write very clear. I write larger now. And so he thought he just needed to paddle me and do stuff like that, try to get me going a little bit more. But he meant a lot in my life. He seemed to know me better than I knew myself then.
Yeah,
and
that's the way a lot of times with teachers and principals.
He went on, I think, after that to Whitthorne too when I was there. So
1956, you graduate into what was then Whitthorne Junior High School, and you met Coach Wallace Dillard. Right.
Yeah, I had Coach Dillard there in homeroom, and you know, he kind of knew my background well, and I didn't know his background as well, but he was a pretty stern guy who kind of set in his ways and tried to play a little basketball for him.
And didn't make it the first time out.
I didn't make it. He kept 2 7th graders, and of course I spent a lot of time at CMA campus in that gymnasium shooting basketball, all the sports facilities. I just played stuff year round, and in fact there was times when my parents couldn't find me, they knew I'd be in the gym somewhere, and on Fridays and Saturday nights when they used to shut it down at 9:30 and get ready to play taps on the campus at 10, and I wasn't home, they knew I snuck back through the coal bin and got back in the gym trying to shoot basketball in the dark. And so I always thought I always had confidence in how I could play, but Coach Dillard, he sort of thought I needed to kind of hang around him and be the manager for the team, and maybe I'd learn more about how the team played. But I had other aspirations of how I thought I could learn the game.
And talk about your good friend during this period, Eddie Holloway.
Well, in fact, I can remember one thing about Eddie, that he liked white beans we were eating at McDowell School. And on Thursday, we'd have white beans that have cooked tomatoes. I swapped my white beans for his cooked tomatoes. So that was bound to happen.
Bound to happen.
Yep.
Okay, so you became fast friends. There was someone else that was at CMA as a player that eventually became one of your heroes.
Right, Lake Kelly. So that's what I would always tell Coach Dillard, that well, I could stay around here and be manager, but I'd like to go. I just got to be on that CMA campus, and Lake Kelly I like to be around Lake. Lake would show me a lot about playing. It was like one-on-one lessons with him. And of course, who knows at the time that Lake Kelly was going to become a great college basketball coach. Of course, there I was when I was in the 8th grade, and I went through the same thing with Coach Dillard, that they kept 4 8th graders, and I would have won the 4th. But that was Lake Kelly. And I can remember Adolph Rupp coming to that gymnasium in practice one afternoon, and just, well, you could say begging Lake Kelly to come play basketball for the University of Kentucky. And I heard Lake tell him, he said, "Coach, I just want to get away from Kentucky. I'm going to school somewhere else." And he said, "Well, that's one thing about it." He says, "Wherever you go, if you play Kentucky, you never will beat them." He went to Georgia Tech, which then was a member of the SEC, and they had him played. It took to late senior year, and back then freshmen couldn't play, so it took them three years. But they beat Kentucky both games, late senior year at Georgia Tech. So Lake made good. I guess he made good that Adolph's promise didn't work totally.
Let's go back to the Little League experiences. 49, the Little League was developing in Columbia, and as you say, it was streamlined in the 9 through 12 bracket in 1950. You talked about a little bit that. Talk about Bungle West, who was instrumental in getting that whole thing organized.
Well, he's just Mr. Little League Baseball in the state of Tennessee, because I don't feel out of place saying that, because not only did he get it going in Columbia, but he got the state organized, became the state commissioner, because he just had more energy, more enthusiasm for the kids, had more down to earth, knew what the kids was best for the kids. In my great Little League days, I think of my career batting average was .489 if you put all the years together. Zeros, some 0 years, 139, 241, stuff like that. Did pretty good in Pony League, though. Played on the team that won the championship, thanks to Ronnie Norton and others, and batted .444. But
legit.
4 for 9. I had several walks, several hit by pitches. In fact, the coaches figured out that I could get on base pretty good, so they listed me as the catcher, which I didn't play, batted me first, and the idea was to get hit by pitch or something like that, and some find a way to get on base. Otherwise, if we were the home team, then I would start. And when Billy Horde played right field, when we got far enough ahead, I got to go in and play, and I was able to get some hits off some people then, because we was already 10, 12 runs ahead, and gets weak pitching, and I could bunt pretty good.
Talk about burnout. I don't remember in that era a lot of kids getting burnt out on sports or baseball or anything, but I see that a lot today. Do you see that? Is that?
Well, constantly. It's just, I can't understand it. Maybe the kids eventually get over that, but I don't see it happening in this generation. Back then, as you know, the summer months were baseball. Spring, the summer. That was, come, April, May, you're ready to play, but you didn't play Little League baseball until school was out. And then you go on through the summer. Now, Little League baseball, June, we were playing district Little League tournaments. July, the baseballs are put away, except for kids that are on select travel teams, and that's where the burnout comes, when they end up playing. They start practicing them through the winter, start playing them in March, and they play through the pre-Little League year, then they play Little League, then they play travel ball, and they don't play multi-sports. And I think, sure, there may be a kid or two that gets a whole lot better and goes on and does something because he played that, but that's one out of hundreds. And I just think kids, the people I know that play pro sports now, that even come from this generation, they played multi-sports. Dan Ugly with Florida Marlins, he played a little bit of everything. He couldn't play basketball, but he played multi-sports in school and all the way through. It benefited him.
All right, so now when you go into the 7th grade, just getting started in junior high school, your dad gives you an option, and your older brother.
He had his option.
And that option was?
Well, he said, you know, you can either go to CMA or go to Whitthorne. But the main thing is you got to keep your grades up, and above that, your behavior. And so that's what I had to do. So that was the bottom line of me being quiet. It was hard for me to be quiet at McDowell School, but that when I got to that point, I mean, I didn't want to go shine my shoes and put on the uniforms and walk the bull ring like my Courtney did.
Now,
Courtney didn't walk the bull ring. He was too slick.
For those that maybe don't know, tell them about walking the bull ring.
The bull ring was for people in the club, attending Club Military Academy, if they were late for class, shoes weren't shined, or the uniform wasn't right, or some kind of misconduct, a certain amount of hours walking around wherever the designated area was, which now is on the Columbia Academy campus. It's now a memorial area for the school. They built a memorial. Not only the people that lost their lives in the war and whatever, but for those kids that walked the bull ring, when they come back there, they know where they walked. There's a monument for it.
Okay, so now from junior high into high school, let's talk about your high school years and the fact that you move off of the campus and into a home not far from what was called the Campus Grill.
Yeah, on West 7th Street, right across the railroad tracks. The campus is where I lived until my senior year. For about 5 years there, we lived on West 7th Street. Of course, Eddie Holloway lived across the street, and it was some fun times for me. I don't think I ever wanted to grow up. Probably hadn't.
Charlie, well, part of the fun was playing the what you call bleacher ball baseball.
Yeah, we'd get Charlie Pogue, who's been still a collegiate baseball umpire, high school umpire, and now it does college basketball and all high school sports. Anyway, he lived on the other side of the campus, but he came from a family with a bunch of boys, with 6 sons. We had 5 brothers, and we'd go over there, and on the football field at CMA, kind of shortened it up where they just had stands on one side back then, and that was our left field bleachers, and we'd get neighborhood games going, but we'd get kids from come across town and play, and we'd have a good game. Just the main thing is who hits the most home runs. I wasn't ever in that bunch.
And he was a good basketball player as well. Charlie was a multi-sport athlete,
yeah.
and kind of ruined Coach Cartwright's plan in one crucial game, I recall.
Right, and that was my first year of officially at the Daily Herald writing sports, playing this Battleground Academy, and I think it was a second or 2 left in the game, and they were 3 points behind. Charlie had 2 free throws, and he didn't miss many shots. So he made the first one. Coach Cartwright called timeout and gave instructions on how to miss the second one, so a teammate like Gary Canuck might could put it back in the basket. Gary's big old strong anyway, and so, but Charlie couldn't miss that shot. He had to come back and make it, and they lost by 1 because, you can pull miracles out a little bit now in a situation like that, but not back in '62.
So, in high school, and early high school, late junior high, 10, 15 years old, you were not only interested in local sports, but also got interested in the Nashville Vols professional baseball team.
Oh my goodness, what days! I just used to love to listen to Larry Munson on the radio, do Nashville ball, baseball games, and eventually Vanderbilt games. But back in those days, everything Larry did with the Nashville balls were away from Sulphurdale Ballpark playing. They were done by ticker tape. He'd get the game in the studio, and he did so good at getting the color games and the sound effects. He wasn't at the game, but you wouldn't know that unless you just had been informed of it. And he would broadcast the games, and twice a year he'd come down to the radio station WKRM in Columbia and do those games. So we go down in the studio and watch him do a game. My dad took pictures a lot at CMA and stuff, so he'd make pictures of Larry doing the ball game in Columbia, and then when he come back the next time, we'd give him the pictures, stuff like that. So I even continued doing that some when he went to the University of Georgia doing games. I'd do the same thing and brought one to him down between the hedges of Sanford Stadium one time.
And you also had that chance to meet another legendary sports writer, Fred Russell, who was with the Banner for a while.
Right. Fred was, the recognized nationwide for his contributions to not only to the National Banner, but Saturday Evening Post, to other things across the nation. And Fred's sister was married to John early in Columbia, and their son Johnny and I was the same age, played Little League ball together, and went to school and church together. And I guess Fred knew me through them, and when I got writing first 2 or 3 years for Daily Herald, he was interested in me coming maybe to the Banner and writing. But by then, well, I just didn't have any interest in leaving Columbia. It just wasn't. I just felt like I was too locked into it, and family-wise, younger brother and sister at home, and thought I needed to be around, and I just feel like I was blessed that I stayed. I'm just so glad that I did.
Stayed at home, didn't take a chance to go to Nashville with a bigger market and a bigger paper.
Right.
Just didn't appeal to you.
And now you look back and see what struggle